Penn State exercises those demons from 2012 and delivers a shellacking to Ohio U. Once again, Tim Aiden, Marty Leap from BlackShoeDiaries.com. Marty, how are we feeling?
You and I talked about it before we came on the air, and it's going to be difficult not to turn this into a Drew Laura love session for the next hour or so.
And Nick Singleton.
Yeah, and Nick Singleton as well. But yeah, you got to feel good. It's not just that Penn State came out and pushed around an inferior opponent and stuck it to them like they should. I feel like it hasn't been since probably 2019 that we've seen a Penn State offense come out and just hang points on the board and for the most part, the entire game march up and down the field. It's been a long time since we've seen a game like this from Penn State. And even against Ohio, it still felt good to see it happen.
Well, no doubt. And I think we mentioned this a little bit on last week's post-game show, but we were hoping to see, we're curious to see if we get a performance like we saw today, where Penn State just almost asserted its will on an inferior opponent, which frankly, that's not something they did last year. I mean, I kept thinking to myself, I hope this is not like a repeat of Villanova when they just could not run the football and offense just looked a little bit shakier than it should have against an inferior opponent. But sure enough, I don't know where to start. I guess we'll start with, you mentioned Drew Aller. I want to talk a bit about Nick Singleton because holy cow, was that a breath of fresh air or what? Early in the game, it's 7-0 Penn State. Here comes Singleton ripping off a 70-yard touchdown run, just gets the edge on the right side of the field, shakes off a couple missed tackles, and somehow keeps his balance, keeps tight roping that sideline all the way to the end zone. That to me felt like a real momentum changer. Maybe not the true momentum changer, but one of them. If Ohio U is hoping they could get a stop, they get the ball back, have a chance to tie it and make things interesting for a while. But, Nick Singleton just one play told them, nah. And then later on, second half, Singleton rips off a 44-yard touchdown run. And I'd be remiss I didn't mention he also had a 48-yard run, I think first play of the second half, which unfortunately didn't lead to any points, but it did put Penn State inside Ohio U's 30 with a chance to put on some points. Unfortunately, Jake Pinniger just shanked a field goal to the right, but didn't matter in the long run. Penn State gets a huge win. So that 70-yard touchdown run, Marty, that was the longest run from scrimmage for Penn State since Journey Brown in 2019 against Pitt broke off an 85-yard run, which helped set up a touchdown in that game. Just how did it feel? To me, it just felt like all this 700-pound gorilla coming off the fan base's back as far as having a running back who's a home run threat when he touches the ball.
Yeah, it wasn't just that. I mean, we talked after the Purdue game how close he came to breaking a few, and then he felt like he definitely would do it this week. It wasn't just the yardage, but his ability, especially that 70-yard touchdown run, takes a hit right by the sidelines. The balance he has to stay in bounds there. And even on his second touchdown run, where it looked like he's going to be dropped for a loss in the backfield, makes two guys miss, gets towards the sideline. His ability to keep his feet in bounds, he's going to be so special when we're already seeing it. And like you said, it was just such a breath of fresh air. Penn State's first 100-yard rusher in 17 games. First time since Kevon Lee went over 100 yards against Michigan in 2020. So just an absolute breath of fresh air, like you said. So much fun to watch. See Singleton show why he was the Gatorade National High School Player of the Year last year. Show why he was number one running back recruit in the country. Just huge for Penn State. And, if you can consistently get anything like we saw today out of Nick Singleton, I think this running game is going to be okay because, the offensive line, it was definitely much better today than we've seen. And what was most important was when they opened holes, Singleton hit those holes and took them, which has been a big problem with Penn State the last couple of years when holes weren't there, backs not hitting it. But Singleton hit it and then some today. Just excellent stuff. So much fun to watch. And again, those runs he had, those long runs, especially those two touchdown runs, just – man, the ability to keep his balance and stay strong and stay in bounds on those runs was really something else.
Sure was. Of course, I also would be remiss if we didn't mention, Katron Allen ripped off a couple nice run, had a long of 11. Kevon Lee actually ended up, believe it or not, it didn't seem like he may have been in the game more. He only got one carry, actually. It was a actually similar play that Singleton used. It was a pitch to the right. He went for no yards, but that's the one Singleton ended up taking to house. And at this point, I mean, I'm probably stating the obvious, Marty, but Nick Singleton is your starting running back, your workhorse back, and it's not even close.
Yeah, absolutely. Singleton has to be running back one at this point going into Auburn next week. Obviously, you're going to face a much stiffer defense in Jordan Hare next weekend than you face today from Ohio. And Singleton has to be RB1. I mean, there's still a role for Kevon Lee on this team. Don't get me wrong. But Nick
And
Singleton.
probably Katron too, I would think.
Yeah,
But
definitely Katron Allen also. But, Nick Singleton brings something different. Katron Allen brings something different. There was a run today where Allen just absolutely trucked over a defensive tackle from Ohio who, according to the TV broadcast, was listed on the roster at over 300 pounds, and Allen just mowed the guy down. Like, again, he brings something different. Nick Singleton brings the ability to be an absolutely elite running back. Something we've talked about. You don't want to compare guys to Saquon Barkley, but there's a lot of Barkley-esque traits to Nick Singleton. He's got to be your main back moving forward. He's got to be getting the majority of the touches. And yeah, there's just no other way around it. If you want this offense to reach its max potential, a lot of that is going to go through the legs of Nick Singleton.
Indeed. I guess we'll switch over now to the other stud freshman who lit it up, and that's one Mr. Drew Aller. I should first mention Sean Clifford had an overall good game. He was 213 yards passing, threw a touchdown. Although, of course, at times, you got some bad Cliff, missing on a wide open receiver, which should have been for a touchdown. So he played up to the first series of the second half, and then Drew Aller came in and played most of the rest of the game from there on out, because Aller comes in there and he just throws like a nice, just throws some nice crisp passes. Eventually hits Omari Evans for a touchdown, which blew the game wide open. It was 26-7 at halftime, 33-7 at that point, and the route was on from there. But Aller, just on the stat line there, ticker below, he threw 88 yards, 6 of 8 passing, 2 touchdowns. The other touchdown went to backup tight end Khalil Dinkins. But he just looked, just the pocket presence, the way he effortlessly just flings it, and just shows the right amount of power and accuracy, no matter where it's headed. It just, again, just like with Singleton run game, it just felt like a breath of fresh air. And, all due respect to Sean Clifford, who, is, great competitor. We've blah, blah, blah. We've mentioned all this before, but I mean, it's pretty clear. Drew Aller is going to be the starter. And frankly, I think it's going to happen before the end of the season, just knowing Cliff's history of getting banged up over the course of a year.
Yeah, I could see that too. You mentioned Sean Clifford's history of getting banged up, struggling to get through a season healthy. And the way Drew Allar's looked in these first 2 games, if Allar's begins to start football games and plays anywhere near like we've seen, you're not going to be able to take him out. I mean, there was a throw today on Allar's second possession where there was a third down and he overthrew Omari Evans. And even like his overthrow and incomplete pass was impressive, as he just threw the ball 35 yards with an absolute ease. And it's just, it's different. When the ball comes out of his hand, it's just different. It reminds you of that pitcher in baseball who can just effortlessly go up there and touch triple digits. It's different, man. And the ball explodes out of his hand with ease. He can make throws. A lot of quarterbacks, he makes throws a lot of NFL quarterbacks cannot make, let alone for a kid who just turned 18 like a month ago. I just remember watching that first drive he was in today, and when he threw that touchdown pass to Omari Evans, the touch on that ball to lob it in there. And I just remember thinking, like, man, this is the quarterback we've been waiting on. This is the quarterback that, quite honestly, Penn State has maybe been waiting on since Kerry Collins. Like, his ceiling, his potential is limitless We've gotten a preview of that these first 2 games of the season, and it leaves me wanting more. I just want more and more of Drew Alar moving forward. And that's not a knock on Sean Clifford, because Sean Clifford played really well today. He had one bad drive. That first drive of the second half, you mentioned missing that open receiver. He missed Nick Singleton on a third down where he had Singleton open the flats for, if not a first down, at least makes a fourth in a position where Penn State probably goes for it, that led to a missed field goal. Outside of that drive, Sean played pretty well, but it's just, you look at Alar, you look what he can do, and it's special, man. He does things that most quarterbacks on this planet cannot do, and just get you so excited for the future of this team. Today, you look at some of the guys who impacted this game. We've mentioned Alar, we've mentioned Singleton. Chop Robinson, who's a true sophomore, was just unblockable. We see Amari Evans catch his first career touchdown. We see Katron Allen making plays on the defense. In addition to Chop, you see Hakeem Beeman and Zakee Wheatley and these young guys running around making plays. And just, man, it's tough not to get super excited about where this team could be in a year or two. And again, that's not taking away anything from this season, but you just see so much young talent out there making plays. And man, it's really exciting for Penn State right now.
Indeed. It's really, I think, so I guess what I wanted to get into was, what was that? Do you think was planned to put Drew Aller in on the second series of the second half? Or do you think it was something where Franklin wasn't happy with how Cliff missed a wide open touchdown on that first series of the second half, especially, with Singleton setting him up so nicely with that huge run, and decided, you know what, I'm going to make a change and, give Drew Aller some playing time. Because I think the concern going into this was, could Penn State build a big lead quickly enough so that, Drew can play the rest of the game? Or do you think that's something this was planned regardless what the score of the game was?
Personally, I think they probably had a plan early third quarter, no matter what, go to Drew, give him at least one series with the starting offensive line, the starting receivers, that sort of thing. And it just so happens that he led them down the field for a score, blew it open at 33-7. And at that point, it was easier to leave him in for the rest of the game. I don't know. I'm sure there's something James Franklin may have addressed post-game. We haven't seen it. But if I had to guess, I would guess they wanted to get him at least one possession in this game with the starting offense around him. It just so happens that possession led to Alar marching them right down the field and scoring the touchdown that blew the game wide open. So at that point, you know what? Let the kid in there, let him develop some rhythm, some rhythm, some confidence. Leave him in the game. It's out of control. No sense risking Sean Clifford hurt at that point. So I think it started as a planned, hey, we're going to Drew here no matter what. And like I said, it just so happens that possession led to Penn State really putting the game on ice and putting them in a position where they could then rest Sean Clifford the rest of the way.
Yes, and I guess so moving on, I guess we'll talk. We've been gushing about the offensive stuff a little bit. You did mention Chop Robinson, the defense, another former blue chipper who actually transferred into Penn State from Maryland, so it wasn't a guy they immediately recruited into the program. But again, another huge addition. Frankly, he's the best pass rusher on the team so far, and it's not even close. That being said, I guess we want to talk about things that, it could leave a little bit concerned. Maybe it was the pass rush. Wasn't quite what I was looking for. I mean, they did get home a few times to at least maybe alter the pass, or force Ohio's quarterback to get rid of it more quickly. But you would have liked, as far as I don't know if they got I think they got one sack, but it may have been later in the game. But I saw Ohio had like 4 sacks at least before Penn State got their first one, and I was hoping to see a little more maybe from Adisa Isaac or someone else who could get some pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, struggling to get the pass rush home at times is definitely a little bit of a concern today. But my biggest thing is I'm not super concerned yet, because we saw just play after play that them blowing up pass attempts by Ohio. I comment on this early in the game on Twitter that Penn State's defensive line was doing exactly what you wanted to see against Ohio, and putting their offensive line on skates. Rourke, the quarterback from Ohio, he's a good quarterback. He's nothing special. They're going to face better quarterbacks in this year, but he's a good quarterback. And he was able to roll out, keep plays alive, throw passes away, that sort of thing. I'm not worried about the pass rush. I do think, like I said, they were getting pressure today more consistently than they were last week. And some of that is because Purdue's offense is designed to get the ball out very quickly. But this was the second game, and Deez Isaac has played in the last 2 calendar years. It's the second game Hakeem Beeman's played in the last 2 calendar years. And we saw both of them play better than they did against Purdue. You see Chop Robinson getting more and more comfortable by the week, is playing every down with a hand in the dirt defensive end instead of a stand-up outside linebacker. I think this pass rush is only going to continue to get better. And I think one thing that helps Penn State on that front too, you might not face a team that's going to be pass heavy again until Ohio State. I know nothing about Central Michigan's offense. I'm not going to lie. They might throw the ball 70 times a game for all I know, but that's Central Michigan. You're going to beat Central Michigan regardless. But you look at Auburn, you look at Northwestern, you look at Michigan, you look at Minnesota. Those are teams that are going to run the ball more than they're going to throw it. So you have time to get this pass rush worked out. And I do think that the defensive line today, I definitely had some concerns about the rush defense coming into this game, largely because my concerns at linebacker are still there. But I thought the defensive line played really good today. I thought PJ Mustipher, man, he was awesome. He was just firing off the ball, pushing guys back, disrupting plays. Great to see as he continues to work his way back from his season-ending injury last year. And one thing I will say about linebacker, give me more of Abdul Carter. The kid is fast. He is violent. There was a play today. He just simply pushed an Ohio back out of bounds, and the kid flew like 5 yards. Like when he pushes kids out of bounds, it's violent, it's aggressive. It's what you want to see from a linebacker. It's what you want to see when a linebacker gets number 11 at Penn State. I think by the end of the year, we could see Carter being a big-time contributor on this defense. And I think for Penn State, the sooner that happens, the better. Because linebacker, Jonathan Sutherland played okay today, but Mike continued. Kobe King I don't remember seeing him make a play all day. Tyler Elsdon, most of the tackles I saw were him 10 yards down the field. Dom DeLuca, he's a kid, reminds me so much of like a Jan Johnson or a Brandon Smith. High football IQ, physical, knows how to get to the ball, but those lack of physical and speed traits will hurt him. But yeah, give me more Abdul Carter at linebacker, because I think that you get him in there with Curtis Jacobs. I think this linebacker crew, as long as those two are healthy, could be okay and could really help this Penn State rush defense. Because like I said, I think the defense line is going to be okay. I think the pass rush will get there in time. This secondary might be one of the absolute best in the country this year. If you can figure out linebacker, I think you could be okay on defense. As I did think today too, I know this is a long-winded answer, and I apologize everyone's listening, but I do think today too, you saw Manny Diaz really start to kind of settle in, get into a groove. And they mentioned this on the telecast a couple times. I thought it was true. If you go back really to like the start of the fourth quarter against Purdue through today's game, you could see Manny Diaz. It's almost like he's really started to understand what he's got in these players, what works, what doesn't work. Because you go back to the start of the fourth quarter against Purdue, this Penn State defense has been electric the last 5 quarters played. And, I do think that bodes well for Penn State's defense moving forward.
Indeed. I'll say, I thought the linebackers looked better this week overall. Of course, the caveat, this is Ohio, but I didn't seem to notice, Tyler or Elsdon or anyone else, get caught flat-footed all the time. They seem to wrap up okay, and they didn't allow any huge runs to blow by them or have like a crossing pattern turn into a, like 20-yard gain, anything like that. So, and I say Jonathan Sutherland's been a pleasant surprise at linebacker. It seems like he's found his position. He's definitely not a liability. I can say that much. He can hold his own. And of course, Curtis Jacobs, you mentioned, definitely the best backer on the team. And Abdul Carter. Oh yeah, we'll definitely be seeing a lot more of him. And I think he can certainly be your starter. Starting, maybe as soon as by the end of the month when they get, into Big Ten, into the heart of Big Ten play. So we'll see how that goes. I guess maybe another concern, since we've been gushing over what I really liked, because another concern, and it's weird to say this, but the receiving core, they had a good game today, but I think I was hoping to see is maybe someone really separate themselves as the top guy, like maybe be a guy like a Jahan Dotson, someone who's a deep threat, someone who who can get behind a defense, take the top off them, just, someone who you got to account for at all times. And I'm not saying it can't happen, but I haven't quite seen that yet. Maybe Mitchell Tinsley is the closest thing to it so far. And Omari Evans did have a nice wide open touchdown grab. So, and he's supposedly a very fast guy. So maybe he could eventually be somebody. But Mark, and what's your assessment on the receiving core? Do you think are you comfortable with it? Do you think there's still some work to do?
Yeah, I did think today the receivers, I would have liked to see them do a little bit better getting separation at times. I did think that was a bit of a problem. There were times Sean Clifford was given a lot of time by the offensive line and just didn't have anybody open. So I would like to see more of that from the receivers. I think they'll be okay at receiver. There's a lot of talent there. We've seen good stuff from Parker Washington the last 2 years. We've seen good stuff from Mitchell Tinsley so far this year. Amari Evans, man, seems like a guy this staff was real high on because we've seen a lot of them last week on the field for the game-winning touchdown play. Played a ton today. We saw Caden Saunders make his first catch. I think receiver's going to be okay. There's too much talent there not to be. Keandre Lambert-Smith, no drops today whatsoever, which is big for him. And we saw a lot of that shiftiness, that explosiveness. Even Jaden Dotton, tip of the cap to him, gets a start today for Penn State, which no one expected. First play of the game, makes a catch for a gain, had a nice little game for Penn State. So, again, I think talent's there at receiver. I think there's some depth there at receiver. I think they'll be okay. I don't think you necessarily need one of the two between Tinsley and Washington to emerge as your true number one guy. But if they do, great, that helps. But I think right now there's enough weapons at receiver that it'll work out there, especially if you can get Singleton and Allen in this running game going, because obviously that opens things up more because defense have to respect the running game more. But yeah, I think they'll be okay receiver. But I will say I agree with you. I don't think they had a great game today, especially with separation and getting open. That was something that at times today held the offense back. And I think if the receivers would have done a little bit better job at getting separation today, Penn State probably hangs 50, maybe even 60 points on the board, because there were a couple drives that got killed where on third down, Cliff was given plenty of time by the offensive line and just had nobody open and nowhere to go with the ball.
Yeah, and hopefully they'll, that won't be a problem against Auburn next week. But it helps that they seem to have the run game figured out. So, it makes Auburn have to respect that. And, if they try to stack the box, then Cliff or Aller can make you pay if you do that. So having the balanced attack back seems like a great thing. I don't know if you noticed this, Marty, but first drive, instead of running the ball, they were throwing these quick screen passes, like kind of like little fake the run and throw a screen pass. It seems like they're throwing something out there for Auburn to have to respect, to have to worry about, like plan for this upcoming week.
Yeah, it definitely seems possible because they were committed to running that multiple times today. And it wasn't just screens to the running backs and bubble stuff out the receivers, quick hit stuff. So I'll be curious to see. I do wonder today how much of what they put on film were things that maybe they wanted Auburn to think about that they're not necessarily going to look to do next week. You can do that when you play an opponent like Ohio, who you're going to manhandle regardless. But yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. And one thing I will say with that sort of stuff with Penn State, you have so many tremendous athletes, from a Singleton to a Keandre Lambert-Smith, Theo Johnson when he gets back in the lineup, Omari Evans with his speed, even Parker Washington, Mitchell Tinsley, where if you can just get these guys the ball in space and let them do their thing, you're probably going to be pretty successful in offense. And speaking of the offense, one of the comment I want to make, I think you're seeing the importance of having the same offense coordinator back-to-back seasons. You scored 46 today. You scored 35 last week. In both of these games, you probably left 7 to 10 points, maybe even more on the field. You're seeing an offense that is finally getting into a rhythm where we're not learning this offense, as Sean Clifford said all offseason, we're mastering it. And I think you're seeing the importance of that pay off. And, it's only been 2 games, and one of the opponents was Ohio. But I think you've seen Mike Yurcich come out this far on a mission to remind people that he is still one of the best offense coordinators in college football, because right now his offense is humming pretty well. And, if it's Ohio, so you don't put in a ton of stock into it. Look at Purdue, and Purdue's probably one of the 5 best teams they'll play this year. if you can play the way the rest of the season, the way you did against Purdue, who's a good football team, you're gonna be pretty successful in offense.
Oh, no doubt. I think we're seeing the importance of having continuity on the offensive coaching staff. This is the first time in 3 years we had the same coordinator back to back years. And with all due respect to Ricky Ronnie, I mean, it's definitely seems like a upgrade having Yurcich as your guy, especially when you pair it with a quarterback like Drew Aller. I mean, again, I don't want to turn this show into me writing love notes to Drew. I'm sure we'll have plenty more shows to do that.
And we'll probably have a lot of shows doing that the next 3 or 4 years. So,
yes. And speaking of the show, before we get further in, I just want to thank all of you who have liked and subscribed to this channel. We have 519 subscribers as the time we started the show. We're hoping to get to 550 subscribers by the Northwestern game on October 1st. So if you haven't already, if it's your first time watching us and you enjoy what we're doing here, please hit that like and subscribe button on the Penn State Voice of College Football channel. So thank you once again for your support, everybody. I guess I think we've talked enough about Ohio and all that. So looking ahead a bit next week, big road game at Auburn. They don't play until 7:30 tonight against San Jose State on ESPNU. I do get ESPNU, so I'll try to watch a little bit of that, do a little bit of scouting. But Mark, I guess going into that game next week, what do you think are some keys if Penn State wants to get out of Jordan-Hare Stadium still undefeated?
to me, it's simple. It's going to come down to one thing in that game. Penn State's got to stop Tank Bigsby in that rushing attack. Auburn's offense is very one-dimensioned, and it's a good dimension. Tank Bigsby is one of the best running backs in the country. Last week, I didn't watch much of the Auburn game. I did check out a little bit of the highlights from their victory last week over Mercer, and from some of the stuff I saw, TJ Finley just didn't look good at quarterback. I don't know what they have at receiver.
I think they subbed in. Sorry to interrupt. I think they subbed in this guy, Robbie Ashford.
They did.
It seemed like he did a little better.
Yeah, and I remember Ashford as a recruit. He was a kid Penn State kind of kicked the tires on a little bit as a dual threat quarterback. So it brings a little more of a rushing threat than Finley will. But and one thing I think that's going to be vital there too is if you look at Auburn, there's a lot of very tumultuous offseason for the Tigers. I mean, at one point it looked like there's no chance Brian Harsin would be coaching this game. So I do think it's a possibility if you can jump on them early, you could see the team kind of fold a little bit.
They also lost both their coordinators in the offseason, so they have new offensive, defensive coordinators.
Yeah, and obviously Mercer and San Jose State are not going to present the challenges that Penn State will. Now, I mean, I think Auburn's going to be very motivated. I know they felt like last year they should have won that game in Happy Valley. I can't say I agree with that because, we were probably a dropped Brandon Smith pick six away from Penn State winning that thing. Yeah, blowing it open and winning it very comfortably. But yeah, it'll be a good game. It'll be a good test for Penn State. If nothing else, it's going to be an electric atmosphere. It's going to be a very highly contested game. I think Penn State's a better all-around team than Auburn. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to pick Penn State to win the game between it being in Jordan-Hare and Auburn. Again, yes, Auburn hasn't played well under Brian Harsin per se, but I think part of the frustration, not just with him, but even the end of the Gus Malzahn years, the way Auburn recruits, there's no reason they shouldn't, be a top 20 to 15 program. So we'll see what happens. It should be a really good game. Should be a great test for Penn State. 3:30 on CBS. Nice little preview for when Penn State and the Big Ten move to CBS in a few years. I will say that in my opinion, in terms of college football channel theme song, CBS's is the best. So I'll be excited to hear that next week associated with Penn State for the first time. That we'll hear a lot of in the coming years. But yeah, should be a good game. I expect it to be a close game, probably a little more on the lower scoring side. And, if you're more interested in what Tim and I have to say of that game, make sure to check out Black Sheet Diaries throughout the week. We'll have our staff predictions later this week after a chance to kind of mull it over a little bit more. But yeah, probably going to be one of the premier matchups in the country next week. I don't know about Auburn. I feel very comfortable saying Penn State will definitely be ranked when the new AP poll comes out tomorrow. I think they're either 26th or 27th coming into today anyway. So it should be one of the more talked about matchups in all college football all week. And yeah, should be a good game down on the Plains next Saturday.
Oh, no doubt. I still I think I've said this before on previous shows, but I am still baffled as to why Auburn just didn't continue feeding Tank Bigsby the rock in the second half. I mean, I remember like after Penn State scored, like it was off, the fumbled reverse play. What was it? There, Tangelo falls on it, sets up Penn short field. They score a touchdown. They go up 21-10. Auburn comes marching right back down, just feeding it to Bigsby. He scores. It's back to a 1-score game, and frankly, I'm surprised they just went away from that. I mean, they still fed it to him, but they seem to put it more in Bo Nix's hands. And Bo Nix, good quarterback, but when you got a workhorse back like Bigsby, who's clearly mowing over the opposing defense, I don't know why they instinctive, but hey, fine with me. Penn State went on to win as a result. So, but we'll see. That's the one thing that does worry me. Can they contain Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter, their backup tailbacks, no slouch either. So it's going to be a huge test for that front seven, and I imagine the secondary is going to throw in with some help too. Frankly, I would think I trust Manny Diaz to come up with something, but I wouldn't be surprised if they try to stack the box, take away the run game, force TJ Finley or Robbie Ashford or whoever's out at quarterback to try to beat you with their receiving core, who it doesn't sound like their receiving core that opposing secondary, especially one like Penn State, should be afraid of covering one-on-one. So it's going to be a very interesting one to see next week. Yes. Hello, Ike. You are actually the first person to comment on this channel so far today. It's a very quiet crowd today. Normally the comments are full of stuff, and I would start looking into answering questions and comments, but frankly, we don't have any of those. So I guess what we'll do is just before we go, just take a look around the rest of the Big Ten. Purdue, last week's opponent, no surprise, they're waxing Indiana State right now, 21-10. That's about midway for the first quarter. You got Washington State. Looks like they just scored a touchdown on Wisconsin, so they drew first blood. That's like 9 minutes to go in the half, so it's 6-0. I guess extra point pending.
They did just hit.
I have the CBS Sports website up, so I'm not watching these live. Iowa looks like they can score a touchdown now. They're up 7-0 on Iowa State, or maybe they got 2 safeties and a field goal already. And then Ohio State, no surprise, they took care of Arkansas State 45-12. Northwestern, who beat Nebraska in that opener in Ireland a couple weeks ago, they go down to Duke 31-23, which a little shocking to me. I thought that's a game I think Northwestern was favored by
they were 10.5 point favorites going into that one.
I'll tell you what, my friends, if anyone picked out of my friends' underdog pool, well, they just leaped ahead of the pack. So good on them. And then later tonight, you got Hawaii and Michigan. And I think the drama there with that game will be, can Michigan cover that 50.5 point spread? I think it's very doable, frankly. I think, even if they put in the third string, I mean, Hawaii is just probably the worst team in FBS right now. I mean, they give up 63 points to Vanderbilt, 49 to Western Kentucky. I mean, Timmy Chang, who I think you probably remember him when he was quarterbacking Hawaii. He's a great quarterback for Hawaii, but as a head coach, he's got his work cut out for him. But he's beloved son of the program, so I'm sure the fan base will give him some time to try to build a competitor there on the islands. But that's about it. Well, unfortunately, I have no comments, questions. So again, it's Ohio U week, so I guess I wouldn't expect much on that front. Hopefully we'll get more engagement after the Auburn game next week, I would think. Marty, any last words, any parting thoughts?
No, I don't think so. All around, you saw from Penn State today what you wanted to see, which was important. They came out, they pushed Ohio around in the trenches. Their defensive line was dominant. The offense moved the ball up and down without much problem. Sean Clifford got into a rhythm and looked good. And they just came out and they stuck it to an inferior opponent, which is something that we have not seen from Penn State enough in the last 2 years. Complete opposite of the Villanova game last year. You mentioned that. We talked about that when we're last year coming out of the Villanova game. Probably should have looked at that. It was more of a red flag than it actually was. And this year that didn't happen. So credit to Penn State for that. And hopefully they can continue to ride this offensive momentum through the first 2 weeks. They're 2 weeks in, averaging about 40 points a game. Hopefully that can carry over into next week's game against Auburn, because I feel very confident saying I don't think Auburn's going to get more than 20, maybe 24 points against Penn State's defense. So if Penn State's offense can continue to do anything near what they've done these first 2 games, I think they'll be okay against the Tigers.
Let's hope so. Thanks everyone who tuned in. Please, if you haven't already, like what you see, like and subscribe to Penn State channel, Voice of College Football. And reminder, tonight, 11:30 Eastern Time, Mark Rogers himself will be live on the main Voice of College Football channel with his call-in show. So he'll take all your questions and comments. Who knows, maybe you'll get a drunken Happy Marty calling in to rave about Drew Aller and Nick Singleton. I'll be fast asleep because I got to get up early tomorrow morning for a half marathon I'm doing. But see down there, blacksheepdiaries.com. Go check us out. Marty, you're going to have I don't know if you've got it up already, but you'll have your 3 takeaways. I'll start putting together the position grades post. That will go up tomorrow sometime, either in the morning or afternoon. And at BSD Tweet, that's your Twitter handle if you want to follow the website. And if you want to follow Marty and I on our own Twitter accounts, there's our Twitter handles, as you can see right there on your screen. We just want to thank you all once again for tuning in, and look forward to doing another recap of this, hopefully after a win down in Auburn next week. We'll see you all later.